Hello to YouTube. Bonjour. Welcome. I'm going to turn on Instagram here in a minute. I just wanted to go on live on YouTube first because for whatever reason yesterday it took a million years. I don't know why, but today it went on straight away. So, hooray! Today we will be reading from Besphinxed. Let's fix my hair. Okay. I suppose I could go ahead and go live on Instagram a couple minutes early. Couldn't hurt, right? Give everybody time to gather, I suppose. Oh, what the hey, let's do it. This is the Instagram camera right here. Too close. Too far away. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Hello. I was trying to figure out the best screenshot to have for this particular reading, and that is what I chose. And I am a little bit early, so I'm going to give everyone some time to pop in and say hello. There is no one here yet. Well, hey, there's Jack. Hi, Jack. You are the first person on either YouTube or Instagram as I get all this set up. Again, now that the fan is on, this is going to have a slight jiggle. Sorry. Yeah, it's still not 10 o'clock. Let's give it a second. Let's take a breath. I've not had time to breathe yet this morning. I started my morning, I got up and immediately went on a business call. But also a hey, you're my friend, so let's catch up because we haven't talked since pandemic call. So it was a 2-in-1 for two for and one for I don't know what for you call that, but that was my morning, and then I have a meeting directly after this reading. So yeah, today is going to be hi Kim. Speak of the devil, I was just on the phone with Mary Rogers and we were talking about how you are so busy running the world right now. You just can't be bothered with our piddly little production that we're putting together. But I wrote you an email if you want to find out what our crazy little thing is all about. Yeah, that'll be fun. So welcome to 10 o'clock, Thursday, July 2nd. That's right. I know what day it is. Aren't you proud? I never know what day it is. It is Thursday, July 2nd, and my reading for you today will be chapter 6 of Besphinxed, which is a book that is dedicated to Mary B. Rogers, also an author friend of mine who lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and walks with me in the parade at DragonCon, and is sort of who I imagined as the basis for Heather, but like a long time ago when she was a rich, mean blonde girl and not and not who she is now. But she taught me many things about how a girl like that could end up befriending a girl like me. And a lot of that informed what this book became. This award-winning, Scribe award-winning book, Besphinxed. Turns out everybody likes reading about the mean girl. How about that? So, hello everyone. Besphinxed, chapter 6. This is my favorite chapter, and it is in Heather's point of view. So, no British narration today. Sorry. You know what? I don't have a tiara on. I was just like, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Princess Alethea. I'm not a princess if I don't have a tiara. So here we go. Much better. Much better. Okay. Besphinxed, chapter 6. Heather lingered behind while Professor Blake opened the lower library vault. There wasn't so much as a creak of hinges as the enormous stone swung open. The cool air that escaped from behind it was musty and had the metallic tang of old magic. Strong magic. Ambrosia Hayden had summoned for her daughter, so the professor was obliged to trot down all those stairs. Considering the massive amounts of money Heather's parents had donated to the school over the years, you'd think they would have installed an elevator or 3. And dust off the magic mirror. Thankfully, the head witch was no longer scolding. Okay, hold on. I'm so rushed this morning. Thankfully, the head witch no longer made scolding remarks to Heather in reference to her mother's flagrant disregard for school rules. Ambrosia Hayden listened to the Harmswood administration as little as she listened to her middle daughter. Come in, Miss Hayden. I'll just be a moment while I get the spell calibrated to the location when your mother specified in her summons. Heather hadn't been called home to the lonely house in Massachusetts, thank goddess. She was going to Vermont. Vermont. Just thinking about it made Heather's heart feel 10 times lighter. You can tell why this is my favorite chapter. Impatiently, she scanned the shelves while she waited. When students spoke about the vault, it was in whispers, as if it was some architectural wonder that Indiana Jones might discover, full of columns, stained glass, elaborate carvings, and mysterious treasures. How disappointed they would be if they could see the dark and dirty thing firsthand. It was little more than an oversized stone closet, or a tomb, a crypt for mysterious treasures. She could make out a block, some sort of egg, and a winged spherical thing. Most of the items slept like corpses under a thick layer of dust, rendering them all bland, ash-colored lumps. Except that annoying feather, of course. The silver gray of its edges twinkled in the shaft of light that slipped in through the open door. I wonder if I'm the most powerful talisman in the room now, thought Heather. Doubt it, answered the voice in her head. On the off chance that any of the magical objects around her were remotely active, Heather closed her eyes and wished the feather out of her life once and for all. But when she opened her eyes again, the feather remained there in its lucite box, cheekily wafting in the invisible wind. No such luck. That should do it, said Professor Blake. The magic mirror shimmered with a silver blue light. Are you ready? She doesn't want the truth, said the voice. Yes, Heather told the professor. I'm ready. Please give your parents my best, Professor Blake lied in return. And be sure to send another summons when you're ready to come home, so I'll know to meet you. It wouldn't be the first time Heather had arrived back at Harmswood to an empty vault. She always wore a pashmina and packed a protein bar in her purse when she traveled this way, just in case. She did not want her deep breath to be obvious, so Heather inhaled slowly, touching the knotted talisman at her neck, and stepped into the mirror. There was another rush of cold wind. It smelled like fresh cut grass and sugar this time. Tiny bolts of energy shot like warm needles through her skin. When her foot touched down on the other side, it was the hardwood floor of the dress shop in Pine Tree. The mirror behind her now was just like all the other mirrors in this place. Only this one had her reflection in it. The rest of the mirrors had the honor of beholding the image of Heather's most excellent mother. Heather slowly, quietly exhaled. Hello, Mother. It's about time. Ambrosia Hayden's blood-red nails curled around what was surely not her first glass of champagne. Every time I have to deal with your head witch, I have half a mind to have that woman fired. Fine with me, said Heather. But her reign will end at the end of term, just like all head witches. Mrs. Hayden went on as if Heather hadn't spoken at all. Shame, really, I don't have time to educate yet another administrator on the nuances of keeping my wayward daughters in line. Every move her mother made looked like a pose from the cover of a magazine. Every inch of her was flawless, soft white gold curls, Hermes scarf, ivory silk blouse and pants, rose gold Jimmy Choos. Taylor, Heather's older sister, sat prettily on the brocade settee across from the bank of mirrors. No one took center stage when Ambrosia Hayden was present, but it didn't take a trained eye to see that Taylor was cut from the same very expensive cloth. She wore pink flats and a sundress covered in yellow peonies, and her hair was a strawberry blonde, where Mrs. Hayden's was paler than lilies. But everything about Taylor was still immaculate from head to toe. More precisely, everything about Taylor was just a little bit better than anything about Heather. No matter how hard Heather tried, Taylor had been there and done that and was 300 times more successful. After 17 years of attempting to be a perfect daughter, Heather had long since become resigned to second place. The only reason she hadn't given up altogether was because of Katie. Rebellion was Katie's domain. Heather didn't have the stamina to play second fiddle to both of her sisters, so she remained lovely and less than perfect, unheard and invisible. "Hi, Taylor," Heather said to her sister. "Congratulations." Taylor skipped the greeting. "You haven't seen Katie, have you? We need to fit you both for bridesmaids' dresses today, or the whole wedding will be thrown off schedule." Seriously? Part of Katie's rebellion was refusing to go to Harmswood. At what point was Heather supposed to have seen her? "No," was all the answer she gave. And then she spotted the mug in Taylor's hand. "Is that cider? Can I have some?" Heather didn't miss much about up north while she was away at Harmswood, but she missed real apple cider. Hot, cold, frozen, in donut form, she didn't mind how it came as long as it was fresh from the mill. "No time," said her mother. "We can't wait all day for Katie. You may as well start trying on gowns. If we find one that suits you, it will be her loss. Emily, show my daughter to the dressing rooms." As if by magic, a plain shop girl in a dress the color of dead leaves appeared to usher Heather into an enormous salon. Several gowns hung on separate hooks around the small room. They were all sleeveless halter tops in varying shades of pastel, save for one that was beautiful, rich turquoise. That was the dress. But it wasn't Heather's choice to make. 3 witches, 7 dresses, apples. The voice inside her head laughed. "This place sort of feels like a fairy tale, doesn't it?" Heather scowled into the mirror. She'd been hearing that voice in her head more and more since the meeting with Professor Blake. She'd written it off as her subconscious or something who called itself her guardian angel and spoke words Heather didn't even know the meaning of. Heather tossed her black pashmina and purse onto the bench and lifted a mauve dress from its hook. If she put the turquoise on first, Mother would dismiss it immediately. Heather had to be strategic about this. "I'd like some cider, please, Emily," she asked the shop girl. Based on past events, Heather knew that no one else would see to her refreshment if she didn't do it herself. "I'm afraid there's none left," the shop girl said quickly. Heather might have been powerless inside her messed up family, but the same could not be said outside of it. Heather turned and gave the shop girl her iciest stare. "Then send someone down to the mill to fetch it. Someone other than you, because you will need to come back here and zip me up." Emily's eyes widened. "Yes, miss," she said, and then scampered away. Heather shimmied out of her own short black dress, but left her shoes on. They were sandals, adequate for a Georgia spring, but completely inappropriate for both a bridesmaid's dress and Vermont's mud season. If she'd worn boots, Mother would have suspected that Heather wanted to stay. She'd brave whatever nonsense her family threw at her and ruin a decent pair of sandals for the chance to spend the night at Brighton Lodge. If she'd worn heels, it would have looked like Heather was trying too hard. Mother would have made countless snide remarks about Heather's lack of fashion sense. Sandals were the wisest option. Mrs. Hayden would simply call her middle daughter stupid and move on from there. Preparing for Hayden family gatherings gave Heather the edge in every mind game. It was also incredibly exhausting. "It's not supposed to be like this, you know," added the inner voice. "Most families aren't this difficult, even families full of witches." "Every family is unhappy in its own way," Heather responded. She remembered a professor quoting something like that from a book during one of their lessons. "I know my family, at least. That makes it easier." "Does it?" Instead of answering the voice, Heather grinned at her reflection in the mirror. The mauve dress looked terrible on her. She took out her severe ponytail and finger-combed her hair while she waited for the shop girl to return. As soon as Heather felt the zipper slide up her back, she walked out of the dressing room. "Ben!" It was so nice to see a handsome face in the shop that wasn't part of her family yet. Is Bright with you? You took long enough, Taylor said. Heather crossed the shop to greet the groom and ignored her sister, the usual response every time. Start again. Heather crossed the shop to greet the groom and ignored her sister, the usual response every time Taylor tried to act like their mother. Hey there, almost little sis. Ben caught Heather up in a bear hug. The strength and unconditional joy of his embrace made her feel amazing. Bright is parking the car. That color is awful, said Mrs. Hayden. Thuban, put the child down so she can try on the next dress. I'd rather not be here all day. And Heather, your choker is all wrong for that neckline. Take it off. Dutifully, Ben gently lowered Heather to the floor and adjusted his glasses. With his dark hair, square jaw, and gray eyes, Ben reminded Heather of every incarnation of Clark Kent she'd ever seen. He even had a newspaper job and everything. The Brighton Elves and the Hayden Witches had spent almost every major holiday of Heather's life at Brighton Lodge. Taylor, Heather, and Katie grew up right alongside Polaris, Thuban, and Alrai, or Bright, Ben, and Al. Allie. The nicknames the girls had given the boys stuck all too easily. They'd made up games, chased each other through the woods, huddled around campfires, rolled down grassy hills, ate apples fresh from the tree. Every wonderful childhood memory had originated here. As soon as Ben and Taylor got hitched, Heather would have a reason to keep coming back to Vermont forever. Few things in life brought her joy, but this was one of them. Brighton Lodge was so huge that Heather could choose almost any room and hide away forever. Taylor would never even know she was there, and vice versa. It made sense that from these two affluent families, at least one of the boys and one of the girls ended up together. The crazy part was, Ben was so nice. He knew very well just how insane the Haydens were, but he chose to tie himself to them anyway. Taylor was pretty enough, sure, but Heather couldn't imagine anyone loving her big sister that much. Heck, Heather couldn't imagine anyone loving anyone that much. Do you have to get back to school right away, or can you stay tonight? Ben asked. We can do it up right, light the fire and everything. Heather couldn't just accept the invitation. She had to play her cards right in order to make it happen. I don't know, she said slowly, as if taking her time to consider his offer. I didn't bring anything, and I didn't really dress to stay. It's Saturday, and there are clothes at the lodge. Come on, Mrs. Hayden, what do you say? Let Heather stay. Mrs. Hayden sighed. As it will probably take that long to finish the fitting, fine. Heather and Ben exchanged smiles. The Brighton boys usually got what they wanted, and this time was no exception. But some small part of Heather wished it had been her sister who wanted her to stay with such enthusiasm. Thank you, Mother, she said on her way back to the dressing room. Heather handed the next dress to Emily as she unclasped her choker. As soon as it was gone, she felt more naked than she had without the dress on. The necklace might have been technically useless as a talisman, but Heather wasn't yet strong enough to face her family without it. She wrapped it around her wrist instead, holding her arm out for Emily to secure the clasp. By the time Heather emerged in the seafoam green dress, Bright was sitting in the lounge with his own glass of champagne. I hear we're waiting for you to model the perfect dress so the groomsmen can match you, he said as he kissed her cheek. No pressure. The next one is better, Heather whispered in his ear. This one is sort of mermaidy, said Taylor. What do you think, Mother? Washes out her complexion, Mrs. Hayden announced. Onward, Heather. Really quickly, though, Bright, I have to ask you something. Bright was easily the smartest person she knew, apart from Professor Blake, and Heather wanted to catch him before he was shuffled off to his own fitting. Do you know what a bellwether is? A trendsetter, Ben answered for him. Sweetheart, said Taylor. Did you transfer over to the fashion desk and not tell me? As thrilled as I know you'd be by the prospect, my dear, no. Ben gave his fiancée a quick kiss. It was incredibly sweet. It was so incredibly sweet that it made Heather jealous down to her toes. She wanted to be the reason someone smiled like that. A real smile, triggered by actual happiness. Bellwether is used a lot in politics, Ben explained. A bellwether state is one whose outcome often predicts how the rest of the country will vote. The term originates in farming, if I remember correctly. The bellwether is the lead sheep in a flock. Yep, totally lost my place. It's time to take a drink. He turned back to Heather. Is that where your head is, government class? Yes. The lie slid easily off her tongue. Lying to her family was like riding a broom. And now was not the time to admit that voice inside her head had a stellar vocabulary. It confused me a little, but I was sure one of you gentlemen knew what it meant. Are you having a tough time? Of course, kind, gentle Ben would ask such a question. Do you need me to help you with your schoolwork? I remember my own Harmswood days. Some of those classes were pure torture. Nothing compared to the Hayden family reunion, said the voice. Heather couldn't argue with that. I can handle it, Heather said with a shrug. I'm more worried about consumer magics this semester, if you can believe that. She had expected them to laugh. Not her mother and sister, but Bright at least, or Ben. She's kidding, said Taylor. Consumer magics is the easiest A on the planet. Oh, Heather, why did you have to open your mouth? But she couldn't seem to stop herself. Our regular teacher's been replaced by this nutball sub. She came in and gave us all a bunch of weirdo projects and paired us up with the most horrible... Heather let her rant trail off into nothing. She sounded ridiculous, even to herself. Mrs. Hayden set her champagne flute on the table next to the settee. If you're having trouble in school, Heather, maybe it's not a good idea for you to stay in Vermont. You should go back and study. Heather wanted to argue that one didn't study for something as stupid as making chocolate chip cookies. But she kept her mouth shut. She'd said too much already. The moment she started fighting this fight would be the moment she lost. The only way out of this was if Ben or Bright stuck up for her. She looked at them both with pleading eyes. Ben looked to his brother. Vermont is always a good idea, Bright said matter-of-factly. All this fresh air clears the mind, often recommended by doctors for working out the kinks behind weirdo projects and strange pairings. And speaking of strange pairings, Mary LaRousse and I are engaged. Heather had to hand it to Bright. It was quite possibly the longest speech he'd ever given, and a topic shift no one would have expected. It succeeded in taking the focus off the conversation off her. Heather gave the elf a crooked grin of thanks, his left eyebrow raised ever so slightly, the sign that he acknowledged her gratitude. She scampered back to the dressing room while the rest of the company was distracted. She could still hear most of the conversation through the thin walls. Taylor was the first to chime in with her congratulations, which had apparently shocked Ben. You don't seem surprised in the least, Ben said to his fiancée. Please. Taylor's voice rang out like silver on crystal. I've known they belonged together since our senior year. It took them long enough to come around to the idea. I'm a slow mover, said Bright. Brother, you're an iceberg, said Ben. We've actually been engaged for a while, said Bright. I just didn't want anything to steal your thunder. It was the midwinter masquerade, wasn't it? Taylor asked, and apparently Bright answered in the affirmative. I knew it. Oh, that's just too perfect. Speaking of perfect, with everyone in high spirits about Bright's announcement, Heather decided it was time for the turquoise dress. She passed it to Emily, fingers crossed. LaRousse, that fairy family from down south, with all those children? Heather could almost hear her mother stick her nose in the air. Really, Polaris? Her status is so far beneath yours. Are you sure about this? Look at his face, Mother, said Taylor. It's true love. I'm just being realistic, said Mrs. Hayden. Does this young woman have any clue what sort of challenges await her as a Brighton wife? Heather considered her own situation as she wriggled into the turquoise dress. Mother could easily say worse things about Owen. She would never approve of her daughter dating a cat shifter with such a dubious history. And if Owen thought Heather was a handful, he would never want to take on the rest of her family. I'm not worried in the slightest, Mrs. Hayden, said Bright. Mary and I have always made quite a unique partnership. Always. Ben was still mystified. Did you two even speak in high school? You didn't really talk to anyone back in those days. He rarely talks now, said Taylor. Mary and Bright, who would have thunk? Ben mused. Mary and Bright. Marion. No way. Taylor laughed hysterically. I never understand what you children find so amusing, said Mrs. Hayden. Heather wasn't sure she understood this one either. She held up a finger to Emily and leaned her ear against the door of the dressing room. Did you really just figure it out? Of all people, Ben, I thought you'd have guessed it by now, Taylor said with great delight. But this is so much better. I am such an idiot, yelled Ben. Marion Bright, Harmswood's own boy, that's a tongue twister. Mary and Bright, Harmswood's own, mad bandits. Say that 10 times. Very hard. Harmswoods. Now that was something Heather did know about. The Mad Bandits were the most infamous pranksters in all of Harmswood history. They pulled epic stunts, like driving Asher LaRousse's pumpkin mobile up to the roof of the library, which made a lot more sense now that Heather knew the perpetrators. They were also, though completely unintentionally, notorious matchmakers. Heather's mind flashed back to that last midwinter masquerade, when Mary LaRousse had shoved Owen into Heather's face and pulled Bright away into the crowd. Heather hadn't truly seen Owen until that moment. Oh, no. Oh, yes, answered the voice in her head. Almost in a trance, Heather pulled open the dressing room door and stumbled into the lounge. Now that one has potential, Mrs. Hayden said predictably. What do you think, Taylor? Ignore the ridiculous sandals, of course. Why she chose to wear those when she knew she'd be trying on full-length gowns, I'll never know. Even if she did care what her mother was saying, Heather was too focused on the story. You and Mary LaRousse, Bellamy's big sister, you are the Mad Bandits? We're the Mad Bandits, Bright confessed. Taylor, who knew about the pumpkin mobile, burst out laughing all over again. Really, darling, I need your undivided attention, said Mrs. Hayden. I like this one too, Mother. Let's go with this color, said Taylor. Wonderful, Mother said in that tone she used when things went her way. It was the closest to cheerful Ambrosia Hayden ever got. Did any of the couples you got together ever break up? Heather asked Bright in desperation. Not that I know of, said Bright, but I haven't really followed. They didn't, Taylor confirmed. Trust me, your record remains untarnished. But Heather would not be dissuaded. Who did you match up last year? Bright chuckled. Ourselves, I guess. Why? Did you hear about anyone else? Heather wasn't sure how to answer that question, but it didn't matter. At that moment, Katie came barreling through one of the sitting room mirrors. Ben managed to catch her before she flew headfirst into the settee. The champagne flutes on the side tables were not so lucky. The lounge filled with the sound of breaking glass. Emily, Mrs. Hayden called to the shop girl, we've had a spill. The timid girl in the crushed leaf dress scurried to attention with a brush and a dustpan. Is your name even Emily? Katie asked the bustling shop girl. No, miss, she answered. Heather hid her clenched fist in the fold of the voluminous skirt. She should have picked up on that detail, but she missed it. This whole time, she might have had an ally. Instead, Heather had ordered Emily around like a servant, just like her mother. Don't throw up, cautioned the voice. We like this dress. Good job, Mom, said Katie. Way to keep living that precious little bubble you've got there. Some days, Heather wished she had half of Katie's gumption. Katie was the only one who called Ambrosia Hayden Mom. She showed up when she wanted, if she wanted, wearing whatever she wanted. Today, it was combat boots, striped leggings, a miniskirt, faded t-shirt, a jean jacket riddled with holes, and a ratty newsboy cap. Each item was a different color of the rainbow, but none of that mattered because of Catherine Hayden. Did you pierce your nose? That. Thank you so much, Katie said, as if she just received an award. I love it too. It's just the tiniest slip of bling, almost like glitter. Another point for Katie. Ambrosia Hayden hated glitter. Now, hello to everyone. Kisses and congratulations to all around. Let's get this over with. As she scanned the room for the dressing area, she finally noticed Heather. Nice dress, sis. Love the shoes. It is a good color, isn't it? Said Taylor. We're thinking of going with that one, said Mrs. Hayden. Heather instantly wished she hadn't. Katie's eyes were already twinkling. Excellent choice. It'll match perfectly. Match what? Mother made the mistake of asking. Katie put a finger on her cap before ripping it off to reveal a spiked mass of bright, rich turquoise hair. Mother's nostrils flared. I'm not going to be able to look at that dress now without remembering you and your little stunts. She pointed at Bright. Did she learn this from you? Katie held up a hand to stop Bright or anyone else from answering. No, Mom. I became a jerk all on my own. As she did with everything she didn't care for, Ambrosia Hayden ignored her youngest daughter. Heather, try the lavender next. And see if you can persuade your little sister not to glamour her skin to match this time. She took the new flute of champagne that not Emily had freshly poured. I swear, you girls can't take anything seriously for 5 minutes. Heather glowered and frog-marched Katie straight back to the dressing room. A pleasure, as always, Katie said as they walked away. I hate you, Heather muttered under her breath. I think I hate her too, said the voice in her head, if that's any consolation. Oddly enough, it was. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoy this, whether you are watching it now or whether you are going to watch it later. I appreciate you coming to all of my readings. My books are available everywhere books are sold, so I encourage you to go buy some, especially this series. The reading order is on my website and on Amazon. It is an amazing series, and I love it so much. And I put so much of myself into it, particularly that chapter. I figured because it was set in Vermont, that chapter was going to ring true for me. I had no idea how much this chapter rang true for me, and I was in tears by the time I finished it. So thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you, Tiffany and Jack. You know exactly what chapter, yes, you knew exactly what chapter this was going to be. The pig of corn is watching me and thinking the Valley Witch is just freaking her out. You have looked upon the pig of corn, which means you have good luck for the day. So please take your good luck for the day. Mwah. I love you all so much. My life is better with you in it. So stay safe this weekend. Stick around. And for those songwriters in the crowd, I will see you on Saturday. Love you. Mwah.